thank you. Waive the minutes, is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll come to order. Our first action is the approval of the minutes for March 20th.
I move to waive the reading of the minutes.
Second.
Okay, any comments, questions, corrections? That was Carol's last meeting. So anything you say, she won't hear about. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good. Just to explain our process here, we have three things actually printed on our agenda, but one has been tabled. So we will not be hearing that case today. So if you're here for Kendall Street, we will not be hearing that today, and you'll be notified when it comes up again. What we do, our process is, I will ask staff to go over what is being requested of us today, and then after that, one of our board members who's been out to the property and has been given the case will kind of paint us a picture of what the neighborhood looks like and what's happening. And then that board member will start questioning the applicant, or I'll ask the applicant to come forward and give us any more additional information they would like to add. The staff person that's assigned the case will then ask questions of the applicant, and then the rest of the board will join in with questions. And after we're done with that part, we will ask if there's public comment. And then after the public comment, we usually just close the public hearing, which means there's no more input from the audience, but we have discussion amongst ourselves. We have very specific points that we need to address and meet in order to provide a variance. If we cannot meet those points, we will deny the variance, or if we feel that we have a need for more information, we can table and ask staff to gather the information we need to make a good decision, and then we'll come back at a later date to either approve or deny. So with that, I'm going to call our first case, which is 2128, and I don't know if it's Diker or Dukier, but it's northeast, and I'll ask staff to go over that case.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
There you go.
First case on the agenda today is 2128 Diker Avenue Northeast.
Diker, okay.
The proposed variances are in order to facilitate the construction of a two-car garage and accessory dwelling unit in the front yard. There are several variances needed to facilitate the request. One, the placement of the garage and ADU in the front yard is contrary to section 5103 F6E 4B, which prohibits the placement of accessory garages in the front yard. Also, section 5208 I1 prohibits the placement of accessory structures in the front yard. A couple other variances needed to facilitate the request include a dimensional variance to construct a, thank you. A dimensional variance to construct a driveway past the front facade of a garage. The site is located on the, let me get my maps pulled up. The site is located on the northeast side of Grand Rapids, indicated by the star there on the map. Looking at the neighborhood, it's primarily a residential area, with platted residential lots made up of a various number of homes and of different types, primarily single family. Looking at the lot, the structure is located on the back of the lot. The structure, the proposed garage and accessory dwelling unit is proposed to be in front of the main structure, hence the need coming before the Board of Zoning Appeals for a variance. There are a couple nuances with accessory dwelling units and square footages that I'm happy to get into if the board has questions, but all of that information should be in your packet. The current use of the property is a single-family residential. the proposed addition of an accessory dwelling unit is permitted by right with a single-family use. I will note there are two letters in the packet from the owner and occupant of 2125, oh shoot, I can't remember the street name, 2125 Emerald Avenue Northeast. Those letters address a couple points of the Board of Zoning Appeals, particularly standard number 4's detriment to property, and I'll let Ms. Swanson address those in her report.
All right. Ms. Swanson.
Good afternoon. So, there we go. I'm worried my voice is fading in and out a little bit too. Let me take a quick swallow of water here. I had the opportunity to tour this site twice, April 9th. I went in the evening. I like to try to see houses at various times of the day. Also went again and visited with Mr. Brady on April 10th and looked at it as well. It is certainly a compact neighborhood, as he described. It's very mid-century, compact lots with primarily single-family dwellings. The unit that we're looking at right here is set further back from the street. There were several others, certainly right in the vicinity, next door, across the street, on adjacent streets, that were in this same situation. And for the houses that were set closer, most of them did have either a single-family or two-car garage. Some had carports, and some did not have a drive or a garage. So there was a mix, but I would say predominantly most of the properties did have a garage on site. So I think at this point, the planning staff has reviewed it, and we can hear the applicant, and I will have a couple questions when we get there.
Do you want to talk at all about the letters?
Sure, I can talk about those now. I didn't know if the individual might be here to make public comment for themselves as well, so I was going to cover that at the end of the public hearing if that was not brought out.
Even if they are, I think I'd like you to, just so that the applicant can make comment to those.
Sure. Let me pull them up here because I didn't print those.
Page 33.
Thank you.
32 and 33.
There. So as Mr. Brady referenced, the letters were from the owner and then the occupant of 2125 Emerald Ave Northeast, which is a couple blocks back of this stated property that we're looking at right now. They raised concerns about the density of development on the property, feeling that this would be a lot of development on such a small lot, and was concerned about the detriment that would have on the property. They also had concerns about it being an ADU, but I will echo that once they have a garage, if the garage is approved, the ADU is a permitted use by right, so we are not really looking at the ADU or the use of rental property. What we're looking at here is the construction of an accessory building on the site. There was some question if, in the correspondence, if the individual lived at the property, the applicant lived at the property, and I believe from when I was out there with Mr. Brady, he confirmed that it is owner-occupied at this point, but that is, again, a point in time evaluation.
Okay, thank you. You're the applicant, I assume? If you would go over to where... Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add to all that?
Yeah, well, thank you for considering this.
Oh, sorry. yes.
Sure. My name is Tiffany Ireland, and my address is 2128 Diker, or Duiker, or whatever you want to call it. Nobody seems to know how to pronounce that. So I did want to state that I was reading over my application yesterday just in preparation for this, and I realized I had stated something inconsistent in my thing, that I'm a single lady. At the time I was filling this out, I was going through some marital issues and thought I was going to be a single lady, but we reconciled.
Great.
So my husband and I are together, but I do spend a lot of time at the property. He has another property, and that pretty much is primarily my home. So we kind of share it and go back and forth between our houses. Right now, it's a little topsy-turvy, no, don't mean to put a bunch of drama, but just that's what it is. So it's not a rental property anymore. We used to use it as a rental property for a number of years, and I moved in and really love it, so. And then, the biggest concern, I was really surprised in regards to the ordinance for a driveway, as well as the garage, being in the front. But there was some restriction, I guess, that even for me to put just a driveway in and have it be paved, that it had to go a certain number of feet past the house in order to be able to do that. And that's part of the variance that I'm asking for, because whether I'm allowed to do this extra accessory building or not, then I would like to at least pave that thing, because it's just a muddy mess every spring. So, and I had put some pictures in there, when the thaw happened just last month. So, so you guys have reviewed everything in regards to that. It'd be really nice to keep things secure. The little house that is there is really just a little one-bedroom house. And so there, in the basement is more of a Michigan basement, like there's this much space that you can actually kind of stand up in. So there's not a lot of storage, and it would be just really nice to be able to have at least the garage to park my car, keep it out of the weather, keep it out of the sun, have a place to store things. And I have family members that live like way in the north part of Michigan that have to come to Grand Rapids every so often. And that's why I was hoping to do the auxiliary dwelling unit above, to have a place for them to be able to stay, and or maybe possibly rent it out, if things change with that. So
I guess I just want one more bit of information before I'll turn it over to Ms. Swanson. Can you talk to us about the shed request?
yeah, so that shed could be removed and gotten rid of, but it would be nice, because of storage issues and stuff like that, to be able to just move it to a spot like just by that one side door. I didn't realize, and I apologize, that I needed to have some kind of permission to put that there. When my tenants were moving out last year, I got it because I thought, well, I can store some things in it before they moved out, and then, I found out otherwise. So, so depending on how you guys feel about that, that would be appreciative if I could keep it, because there's just not enough room in that backyard to be able to put it. And even to try to get it back there, I would literally probably have to take down the back privacy fence, move it across my back door neighbor's property to be able to get it there. It could potentially fit. It's just really tight.
Sure.
So,
Thank you. Ms. Swanson?
I do have just a couple. I do have just a couple questions for you. Could you tell us a little bit, please, about any outreach you did with neighbors about this request? I know the city sends a notice out, but did you have any questions from neighbors, approach any neighbors, tell them what you were doing?
the one neighbor lady to my north, I did talk with her, Sue, and she was concerned about the height of it, because she didn't want to have there be a big shadow going on her backyard, from a two-story building there. I did share with her that I wanted to work with her on that. She likes to lay out in the sun, and she loves her flowers and everything else. So I even sent her some photos of, what I could do differently to help that. And I planned on taking down the 2 trees that are in the very front, in front of the front porch. And those shed a lot of shade onto her backyard. So that would really open it up a whole bunch for her, so.
Okay. What would happen to the trees was one of my other questions, so thank you.
Oh, good, yeah.
And then, could you please clarify the length of the driveway that you're looking at putting in?
Yeah, I believe that I had a sketch.
I just want to make sure I understand how far back toward the house and past the proposed garage you were looking at.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to go all the way from the sidewalk up to, there's like French doors that are on that kind of south side of the house. I go in and out those doors mostly. And it looks like, so it's 128 feet back. The house takes about 20 feet, so it'd be about 100 feet
Okay.
approximately. And then I was thinking about if the auxiliary, unit was allowed to have like a swoosh, over to the left to be able to pull into the garage. And that way I wouldn't have to do a new, what do they call that? The easement or? Yeah, driveway cuts. Thank you. I wouldn't have to do a new one, just to go straight into the garage as well as that side area. But I figured that would be great because if I have visitors, if we do have somebody living upstairs, then those cars don't have to be parked on the street. And we already are pretty congested as it is on the street. So there's the neighbor across the street from me, and he's got several vehicles, and we're always moving in and out of those vehicles. So to get some more vehicles off the street would be great.
Okay. Those are my questions, Madam Chair.
Anybody else? No? So if you were to get the garage, would you still need the driveway to go all the way back if you're parking in the garage?
I guess I probably wouldn't need it to go all the way back. Yeah, we could just make that into green space.
Because
I just-
that's part of the issue, right? Is that it goes beyond the back of the garage?
Yep, so one of the variance requests is for driveways are required to end at the front of the garage, at the garage doors. So one of the requests is to extend it back towards the house.
Okay.
If you want to drop that, you are more than welcome to,
Okay.
or leave it.
Yeah, Rowan, I remember you had said, ask for everything that
That-
maybe I would want to do, and then, yeah, I'm willing to work with the city, obviously, in regards to making it differently. Because I could, yeah, if we put in the garage, had the swoosh, no driveway up to the actual house itself, I'm going to put like a patio in between the house and the garage, so that would be a nice walkway to go, or I was hoping to anyway. I'm sure that's probably part of my question, is if I can, to be able to walk into the front door.
Okay.
Are you allowed to put a sidewalk in then to that door from the garage? If you wanted to, a walkway?
Oh, yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Swenson.
There's already a patio that was shown on the plan between the house and the proposed garage that you were leaving. You're thinking of another patio on the property then?
Well, right now, there's like a wooden deck.
Yeah.
It's a pretty
Right.
kittywampus deck. So I was going to take that out and put in a nice cement.
Okay,
walkway.
but not extend it over more in front of the house. You would be staying pretty much on that footprint.
On the drawing, I was hoping to make it go across the front, like 20 feet of where the front door is. Just because it would be nice to have like someplace to hang out outside and, is that something that would be?
That's not part of the request.
Oh.
But I guess,
No,
It's-
it's allowed.
right.
It's allowed.
Well, my question is I
Okay.
see the house is kind of L-shaped. There's a front part and then the back where the French doors are. And on the drawing, it looks like the patio stops kind of where that deck is now. So I treated them as one and the same for footprint.
Oh, good.
And I guess
Okay.
I'm asking you, are you looking at extending that footprint to the south at all or staying?
There is
within?
actually already a little bit of a cement apron in front of those French doors.
Okay.
So I don't feel like it would be necessary if that,
I bring this up simply because there's a green space requirement, and I want to make sure that we don't exceed that. So that would be something we would look at if we were to go ahead and approve this,
okay.
if you were going to be adding to that patio area.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Okay.
I think she's just saying she's going to extend it a few feet
Yep.
this way and a few feet that way.
And that's, yeah.
Anybody else? Mr. Sizer?
Hi. Was there ever given thought to just making this an addition rather than a garage?
I did consider doing like a breezeway or something like that, so it would be a covered area. But to connect the house to the garage, like if I just put the garage in front of the house, it would do away with some nice windows, and it would make the home really dark inside.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just had to ask a question because if there's a different alternative, we're supposed to be looking at, if there's a different way to accomplish what you're trying to achieve, we're supposed to be looking at that, I believe.
Okay,
Thanks.
yeah. If there's a suggestion, I'd be, interested in looking at that.
Yeah, an attached garage on the front would still require a variance in this neighborhood. Garages are required to be set back 5 feet from the front facade of the house, which would be impossible to do here because of the house placement. So an attached garage would still necessitate at least one variance, potentially multiple from the board.
Anybody? Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I just had one question regarding the orientation of the garage. Is the intent for like a vehicle to enter from the front, so like street side, or would it be off the driveway, like with the orientation of the garage door? I just can't tell from the renderings.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I was thinking that the garage door would actually be facing the street.
Okay.
And then, there would be a swoosh of cement.
For you, Tiffany.
Oh, thanks. So I can point to it. Oh, sorry.
Not at all.
Okay. Okay. And then also just for clarity, and I'm sorry if it's in here,
Sure.
I spent quite a bit of time reviewing these prior, but this is just a one-car garage, correct?
I was hoping to make it a two-stall garage if possible.
24 by 20.
Because that way, if I'm there and then the tenant is upstairs, that we both have a space to park in the garage.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Anybody else? Okay, we're going to ask if there's any public comment.
Okay.
So you can sit down, and we will see if anybody who's on this side of the room has public comment about 2128 Duke.
Thank you for listening. I really
Dyker,
appreciate it.
Dukier? Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing none, do you want to close the public hearing?
Sure. Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I need,
I'll second.
thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay. Where do you want to go with this?
Well, I'm
Complicated.
my initial thought is that we should treat the existing accessory dwelling unit, and a variance is required for that as well as for the proposed garage. So I was going to break this into two and deal with that one first. And then
Did you mean the driveway?
the little shed. Don't we need
Oh.
a variance for the shed?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Okay.
So we have to have a variance for the shed. We would have to have a variance for the garage. And with the garage, we would also need a variance for paving to go behind the facade of the garage.
Yep. So if you look at the proposed site plan, we have the garage here on the left side of the site plan, and then the small storage shed. I lumped both of those into the variance for the placement in the front yard. Apologies if that wasn't clear in the staff report. So you are welcome to break those two apart and treat them as separate variances if wished.
And the way I understand it is we'll deal with the driveway length if the garage is approved?
Correct, as
Okay.
as part of that variance.
Okay.
But I felt that the shed was kind of a distinct use and had some different points that went with our criteria to bring up. So if everyone's agreeable to that, I can walk through my findings and
Just a point of clarification, the shed is currently in this location?
No.
Correct, yep. It was installed without an accessory structure permit, so, which would have been required. So the applicant will need to get a permit once the variance is approved. A permit would not be approved without the requested variance.
Gotcha.
And it's actually in the front yard where the garage would,
Yeah, it's on the other side of the
It's-
property.
Just wasn't sure if it was going to be moved. I got it.
yeah, it's going to be moved back if it's approved.
Yeah. And also making sure it is within the setback requirement on the property.
Correct. Yep.
So it's going to kind of pull that one out separately if
Okay.
everyone's agreeable. So as you know, we have a list of criteria and standards we have to meet. The first one would be an exceptional or extraordinary circumstance or condition. This is a very narrow lot. While there are other narrow lots in this area, the house was built 8 feet from the rear property line. I think that's an extraordinary condition for the narrowness and the placement of the house on the property, so I am agreeable that that standard is met. When we look at the second standard, substantial property right, I think a storage shed would be a substantial property right on property. And certainly you need some place to store things rather than leaving them out. So I find having the shed a substantial property right. I find that criteria met. For not self-created, the building has been there since 1927. This wasn't something that you created, so I would leave that as not self-created as well. No substantial detriment. The shed has a small footprint. It is an accessory, small accessory building. I don't think a storage facility of that size on the property is a substantial detriment. In compliance with the master plan and zoning, I think that since the shed does enhance the livability of the property and the usability, it contributes to the residential character of the neighborhood, and I would find that criteria met as well. So based on those findings, if there's no discussion, I would make a motion to approve the variance to allow the shed to be in the front of the property as long as it complies with the setbacks.
Second.
Okay, there's a second. I'm just a little hung up on, I do know that there are exceptional circumstances, but they're not, I mean, they're shared by a number of lots in the neighborhood. So does it make it unique? Or am I mixing up 2 points here?
I think there are a number of properties in the neighborhood. I drove around, I do not have a count. I think I heard there were maybe 7 or 8 of the properties that were set back far. But it wasn't a lot of them. Most of the properties are the houses are built close up. Rowan and I, Mr. Brady and I talked about this when we drove, why those houses felt they wanted to build so far back. So I did think that qualified as some uniqueness here,
Okay.
that it was far back.
All right, all right.
I concur with Ms. Swanson's assessment of uniqueness there, and I think the aerial map that we had up at the beginning was indicative of that. I mean, you know, your 30-second glance at that, yeah, that one, you know, the vast majority you can see are set to the front.
Yeah. There are 7 homes that aren't on, when you add up the ones on Eastern, Diker, and Emerald. So, and just in that block, I mean, from Eleanor to Graceland.
Yeah.
I didn't drive around any more than that, but,
And maybe
yeah.
it was a thing with that block at that time, right? But
Yeah, it
the
seemed like
neighborhood at
yeah, like a thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you build the garage in front of the house, kind of, you know, when the trends
Yeah.
start going that way, and it's like, why did they do that? But, okay, I want to make sure that we're setting a tone that doesn't apply to you know, a lot more in the neighborhood, that's all. You know, we're not claiming there's uniqueness when there isn't, that's all.
Yeah, it was just the predominance by far,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay.
There were some, but I would say this was the exception as opposed to the majority, or even close to a high percentage.
Okay. Okay, so there's a motion to approve the shed in the placement based on the schematic that we have, which is closer to the house than where it is now. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
You're opposed? I am too, actually, because I'm a
Sorry, I
little
missed the part. I would,
Huh?
I had something to say, I was missed on discussion, so I
I'm sorry.
I should have spoke up for discussion before we took the vote,
Yeah.
so I apologize.
Okay, so what is,
It was more, I just want to make sure we're not doing it backwards. Once you build the garage, there is space to store things now. And you can
understood.
add another foot to the garage. You don't need the accessory dwelling, technically. If you don't have the garage, I can understand why you need the storage unit. And I didn't get a chance to say that, I apologize. I should have been more aggressive.
And I appreciate that, and I struggled with that as well, the kind of a chicken or an egg.
Right, yeah.
But I didn't know where need isn't something we look at. We look at the criteria. And so that's why, even when I was struggling, did I need a separate motion on this? I felt yes, because it's an accessory dwelling unit, and if we said, well, you have something else, so you don't need it, need is not one of our criteria.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said ADU.
ADU.
If we approve the garage, then there is no extraordinary circumstances that they need another storage unit.
Or substantial property right is
Thank you.
a
That's a better
lesser,
way to do it.
yeah. Right, if,
Potentially, I'm not saying there
Okay.
isn't, it's just a question to
Yeah.
ask.
okay,
But we already
so
voted, so.
we have a 4-2, we're still okay?
No, 5 affirmative votes is required for a dimensional variance.
Okay, do you want to go to the garage variance, and then if someone would like to make a different motion about the shed later, can we do that?
Sure, I would do that. So
Looking at
can we,
The board already voted and it was 4-2,
Can we,
so.
go ahead.
but we have to have an affirmative vote to deny. We
Correct.
can't just let it go down. So if we don't make that vote right now, we could have that vote
This was a motion
later.
to approve that failed, so now it's still on the table,
Okay,
the shed variance.
okay.
I see what you're saying.
So can we table it until
Until after the
after?
garage?
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
that's what, yeah, I would like to do that.
I'll just add that our ordinance allows, if you have a property with a detached accessory structure, you're permitted an additional storage shed, is what I would call it, if it's less than 120 square feet. So our ordinance does outline individuals with detached garages are also allowed to have an additional storage shed of 120 square feet or less.
So we could vote now, and that makes it different. That makes it, I wasn't aware of that.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
So I just want to clarify, are you saying then if the garage gets approved, the shed's an automatic approval?
No, I'm
Okay.
just pointing to the language in the ordinance. Our ordinance limits the number of detached and attached accessory structures allowed on a property. You get one detached, one attached accessory structure. So that could be a detached garage and an attached garage, and like a she shed in the backyard. There is an exception for small storage sheds of 120 square feet or less. They don't count towards your limit of 2, essentially, one attached and one detached. I can pull up the language if that would be helpful. to
But one
look at.
approval doesn't just automatically follow the other?
No.
Okay.
That information has no bearing on the approval process. I'm just outlining that provision of our ordinance, if that is helpful. Yeah.
I just think if we tackle the garage first, it might change the thought process of some of us that voted no. So I would like to try that and see where we go, and then revisit the shed. Okay? Go ahead.
So now, excuse me, so that's tabled. We don't need a vote on that, and I can move to the second variance, which is to build an accessory building on the the property as presented in the plans. And I will walk through my thinking on this, and perhaps then we can have some discussion, and I'll make a motion afterward based on where we land on discussion. Our criteria are the same. Once again, we have to say there is an exceptional or extraordinary circumstance or condition to the building or the property, and I would continue that this is a narrow lot and the property, the building on the property sits very far back, and so I think that is in this neighborhood somewhat exceptional or extraordinary. As far as substantial property right, this is where I am struggling, because while I believe it is a substantial property right to have off-street parking if it's available and a covered garage, I'm not sure that there is a substantial property right to have an accessory building that is this large, that's 2 cars, and also for the square footage that it takes up. And I spent a lot of time, I don't have my calculation sheet with me. I went back to our minutes of this board where we discussed whether or not garages were a substantial property right back with the property on Powers Avenue back in October that Mr. Kirkpatrick was the inspector on. And we had discussion but not a determination that we made if garages were a substantial property right. I think my concern here is that this request would be for a 2-car garage versus a single-car garage, and also for parking that would almost allow another 2 cars to park, paving that would allow for an additional at least 2 cars to park on the property. And I'm concerned about the square footage of the accessory use as well, kind of dominating the size of the property. When I went out and actually did some measuring, per the plans, if the garage is built as proposed and the shed is there, only 8 linear feet of the property is used for the primary use of the property, which is residential. Then we come into the accessory building, which is a garage. And again, we're not talking about how that garage is used as an ADU or a storage facility. To me, suddenly we had a secondary use of the property, which is storage for cars, becoming not accessory. It becomes a very predominant use. And so I was concerned about that, and I don't necessarily feel that a 2-car garage and 2 additional paving spaces or more are a substantial property right. So I am not sure that is met. As far as being self-created, again, we've already established that the house was constructed back in 1927, long before this ordinance, and its placement on the property was not created by the applicant. No substantial detriment. Again, this is a very, a 24 by 24 foot, 2-story structure has over 1,000 square feet that we are adding to the property, which is usable space, which is actually more than the square footage of the house. And so to have that large of a structure up front, I felt would be detrimental to the neighborhood because it takes away the residential character. As you drive around there, all the other garages are set back, are smaller. There are 1-car garages and there are carports. And I felt that having a structure of that size and to have the garage placed so prominently forward would be detrimental to the residential character of the neighborhood. Master plan and zoning ordinance, again, we want a compact neighborhood and we support that there should be opportunities for people to enjoy their property. And the ADU, although it is a use by right, that's a use by right, so we're not considering it. But using a portion of that building for an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, would be consistent with the plan. So that, I would find that criteria met. I am not, however, convinced that standard 2 or standard 4 are met. So before I make a motion, if there's individuals that would like to weigh in on that, I'd welcome it.
Can you bring up that aerial again? The reason I asked for that is if you, it's a substantial property right, I kind of go to looking at the aerial, and I didn't go in, I know you always do a great job of going out and looking at everything. Not great at that. It looks like a lot of those houses, just from the aerial, that quite a few are two-car garages. But they're circled, I have one in here, there was a lot of circles around the garages. So just going by the peaks and the way the aprons are, it looks like quite a few are two-stall. Granted, they're probably not 24 by 24, they're probably more like the 20-footers back at the time they built those. But the vast majority, seemingly though, and I was always of the belief of a lot of people, unless I'm looking at the wrong one.
Nope.
Okay. That would lead me to believe that other people in the neighborhood have that ability, then this person should have that substantial right to have the potential to have a two-stall garage. And then I guess you have to bring it up to today's standards of how do you fit two bigger cars in there. But again, I'm only looking at an aerial, so
Sure.
I saw a lot of lean-tos and.
What I called carports.
Yeah,
yes.
carports and single-car garages. Now, not to say that there aren't doubles. I'm not saying that there aren't. I'm just saying that, the pictures that I took and what I'm looking at, there are a number of single-car garages. So it's a mix. It really is a mix.
And to your point, I did start to count. But I also said, aside from just counting, there is also, for detriment to the neighborhood, the perception, what you see, and how far, when you're standing right on that property is one thing. As you get further out and further out, what you see is different.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes more to, I think, the substantial detriment than substantial property right. But there were quite a few carports, lean-tos, one family that, as I started to count, I said, I'm not coming up with anything that's glaringly one way or the other that's going to sway me from substantial property right.
Again,
Yeah.
I trust that you saw
Yeah.
it, so thank you.
I mean, I might think about it a little differently in that the purpose of what we're doing is not to freeze in place what was built in the 20s through the 50s, right? Cities need to modernize, structures need to get replaced. And if we were to tear down this house, right, and put a new house on the parcel and it goes to the front, they could likely find a way to get a two-car garage in there, and they likely would find a way to get a two-car garage there. So I think it is a substantial property right that this parcel is lacking, and even from like a economic fairness and sustainability purpose, right? We don't want to encourage people to hold their properties until they sell them and get them torn down, right? We want them to be able to redevelop over time and add new parts to it to extend the economic and useful life of that property. I also would contend that there's no, and this one's a little harder for me, admittedly, no substantial detriment to the neighborhood in that, pushing a structure further forward on the parcel is more consistent with the character of the neighborhood. Putting a two-story structure closer to the front of the parcel makes more sense than having this house buried in the back there. And, it would be better if it wasn't a garage door facing the street, right? It'd be better if there's, a couple windows and a regular man door there, right? From an architectural standpoint, that would meet the character of the neighborhood. There might be some challenges, actually, how do you get into it, right? And so, maybe we could require a treatment, right? Instead of a aluminum roll-up door, something that has a little more architectural character to it to alleviate some of that detriment there.
Yeah, but aren't you concerned about just it dwarfing the size of the house? I mean, I can appreciate what the neighbors are saying here, and trust me when I say, when I bought my first house 3 years ago and I first got a garage, it was like a religious experience. So I want to appreciate parking outside for the applicant is challenging. And I'm not saying that, she doesn't, I completely agree, that, having a garage like the rest of the neighborhood, I think I can get behind. What I'm struggling with is the building that is being proposed that will dwarf the house and will, basically that's all you'll see when the lot, it will also change, in my opinion, sort of the character of the neighborhood. So that's my biggest concern with this. I think that if she were proposing, even just a two-stall garage, that was just a garage without the accessory unit, I think that would be a different conversation for me than what is being proposed.
So
Yeah, I think I share the general concerns of Ms. Swanson and Ms. Schaefer. I think in hearing the conversation around substantial property right, I think we have as a body argued that if others in the neighborhood have covered parking, that it can be considered a substantial property right. I think the type of structure that's being suggested doesn't meet that criteria. I think a lean-to or a one-car garage, something more modest that fits the character of a 1920s neighborhood, might be more fitting as a substantial property right. But I think my bigger concern is the substantial detriment to the neighborhood. I feel like this is a very large structure that doesn't fit with the street frontage and the character of that. And I think even through recommending certain types of materials or design, I also have concerns just about safety. One of the things about these 1920s neighborhoods that a lot of people appreciate is that garages are in the back so that windows face the street, eyes are on streets, right? So you can see kids playing, you can see what's going on. So adding a large uninhabited structure creates a barrier between a resident's eyes on the street. So there's some public safety issues there. I think you all know, any opportunity to add more housing and density to a neighborhood, this cuts deep because the fact that it could be an ADU, I absolutely love that. But knowing that that's not a guarantee, I don't feel comfortable adding a large car house right in the front yard facing a neighbor.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. Normally, you and I are in alignment with the accessory units, much to the dismay of our chairwoman. And I agree. I think, though, that the fact that it just won't fit with the neighborhood, it just will stick out, I think, like a sore thumb to have a very modern garage AUP dwarfing the size of the house in basically the front lawn it won't fit with the neighborhood.
Mr. Brady, this is a hypothetical. I don't really know if we're allowed to do hypotheticals here. Let's just say the garage was built pre-us, and it sat there, it was built in 1950, it was in the front yard. Am I to understand that they have a right to make that an ADU if they wanted to?
Mm-hmm.
Without coming to us at all?
If the structure was existing and the applicant either wanted to add a second floor onto that structure or convert the existing structure into an accessory dwelling unit and make no changes to the placement or the footprint of the structure, they would not need any variances from the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay.
So as I looked at this, again, I think we had this question when we looked at the property at 800 Powers Avenue last fall. For those of the board that support accessory dwelling units, that is not our issue, because we could also approve this garage, approve this accessory structure, and it would not necessarily become an ADU. And it may not be maintained as an ADU. It is an accessory structure. And it is the presence of an accessory structure that dwarfs, overtakes the square footage and primary usage and appearance of the primary use of the property that leads me to find that standard 2 and standard 4 are not met. So I'm going to make a motion at this time, if I can. You can still discuss, I guess, after a motion is made. But I'm going to make a motion that, based on the points already stated, that the request for the variance is denied.
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Not this time.
Good discussion. Thank you very much. Okay, all those in favor, okay, so this includes the extended driveway?
No,
Or not?
No, this does
No?
not include the paving, because if the driveway is not there, then we have to talk about the paving.
Okay, all right. All those in favor of the motion to deny the accessory unit, the garage?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so we have one opposed. We're good?
Yep.
Okay. Now, we still have the shed and the extended driveway, or paving,
Correct.
to address. Okay.
Do you have a preference of what order they're addressed in?
I don't, but do we need someone else to do the shed? Since she put in a motion already that failed? I'm not sure how that works.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Do we just want to ask the folks who voted no if anything has changed? Or do you guys want to make a motion to deny the shed?
No.
No.
Oh, yeah, we have a motion to approve
Approve.
that failed, so we need a motion to deny that passes.
Right.
Can we put forth another motion to approve? The shed?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can just redo yours then.
Yeah, because the situation's changed. And
Okay.
I agree with Mr. Sizer.
Then I'm going to make a motion that we approve the variance to allow the shed to go in front of the property, or in front of the building,
Her plans?
per plans, and within setback requirements. Do I need to walk through the criteria again, or can I say as previously stated?
Yeah, you can do that.
As previously stated.
Okay, is there support?
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's, now, cement.
Paving. So again, I went out there, and I went out there after some rain, and it was indeed a challenging driveway. So I'm perhaps tipping my hand here, but at this point, I will make a motion to approve that there be paving allowed for the driveway per plans, based on findings with the criteria that this is an exceptional or extraordinary circumstance, the narrowness of the property and the placement of the building on the property, that a paved driveway is a substantial property right. The need for the variance was not self-created, that a paved driveway is not a substantial detriment and will actually enhance the property, and that this would be consistent with the master plan and zoning ordinance to promote the livability of the residential neighborhood.
Ms. Swanson, I'll add that the specific variance that the applicant would need would be a dimensional variance to reduce the required 20 feet requirement that a driveway must extend past the front of a dwelling. So the variance will change a little bit because the garage is no longer there per plan submitted. So it'll be the same variance as we saw last month with the case along Diamond regarding how far a driveway must extend past the front of a dwelling. I'm happy to type up a motion real quick if that would aid the board, or if what I've described is satisfactory.
I think what you described is satisfactory. The only thing I want, you said as proposed, she still would have a piece going off into the non-existing garage, if it's per
thank you.
plans. So I don't
Thank you.
know if you want to do that or not.
Thank you. I think that's a good clarification, that the driveway go from the street back, straight back, and that the area shown to go into the proposed garage that was not approved is not part of our variance approval.
Second.
All right. Everyone clear? Okay. All those in favor of approving the driveway back to the house?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. you.
Just one final thing. I did give the applicant, when the applicant came into our office requesting a variance, they were considering either a single-story garage or a garage with an ADU above. I gave them the guidance to come in with a full request, so they wouldn't have to come back for you if they decided they wanted to pursue a second-story ADU above the garage. Would you like to hear a revised plan of a single-story garage? Would that change your thinking at all for the placement of the accessory structure?
I'm confused. I
Today?
thought they wouldn't have to come back
They
for.
don't have to come back for an ADU.
No, so an accessory structure in the front yard is not permitted, either a garage or an accessory or an accessory dwelling unit. So that variance was denied, so it was the placement that was at issue. So the applicant, I know, expressed to me an option of just doing a garage without a second-story accessory dwelling unit. That's contrary to the plans that were before you, based on the guidance that I gave the applicant. Would you like to hear if the applicant would be open to a revision to a single-story structure in the front yard? Would the board like to hear that option?
I mean, I would not be opposed. I would hate to make the applicant come back, and my concern was about the
Scale.
the scale of the particular building that was proposed. So if there's something smaller scale that you'd like to propose that's in alignment with the neighborhood, I think, Larry, to your point, you know, having a covered structure is part of living in that neighborhood. So I'm not opposed, but if I'm the only one, then we can just move forward.
I think there's more to it, unfortunately. When it gets to that, I went back and read the letters.
I can't hear you.
Oh,
I
Larry,
apologize.
Thank you.
I went back and read the letters too, and the letters were stating that one really didn't want the garage. The other one said that they prefer to see a single story. I think there's a lot more to it. And it might be better to come back. I would suggest to come back with elevations and things like that to make it a better sale for us if they want to do that. That'd be my suggestion.
yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Okay.
Can we do that in an administrative way that isn't?
So when I will work with the applicant, they can come back before you with a substantially different request based on the concerns that the board raised. I believe a single-story structure as opposed to a two-story structure would be a substantially different request. So although the variance was denied, there is enough difference of a single story, in my opinion, based on the board discussion, that the applicant would be able to come back. I will work with the attorney's office on what would be required for noticing or another application, and we will make all efforts to reduce fees as to the extent possible for the applicant.
Okay. That would be our preference. Thank you. Okay, thanks, guys. That was a great discussion. Okay, 1722, 1726, and 1730 Kendall has been tabled, so we will not be hearing that today. And now we are at 3535 Lake Eastbrook Southeast for a dimensional variance. Hang on just one second. Let's get, I know you're excited. It's been a whole hour. I'm sorry. But we got to let this guy do his job. He gets paid.
The third case on the agenda, second case we're hearing today, is regarding 3535 Lake Eastbrook Southeast. The site is located in the southeast corner of the city, directly east of the Beltline, north of 28th Street, indicated there with a star. Looking at the property, it is on Lake Eastbrook. It's a very unusual shaped property in terms of most of it is in the water. Looking at the property specifically, The part that is above water is this portion here towards the southwest of the property. There's a split-level building and an associated parking lot. The request before you today is in order to establish a spa business on the subject property. The requested variances include a variance of 22.8 feet to reduce the required 25-foot front setback from the front property line to 2.2 feet, a dimensional variance of 25 feet to eliminate the required 25-foot front setback from the water's edge, and a dimensional variance of 75 feet to eliminate the required 75-foot setback from the water's edge, and then a dimensional variance of 9 feet to reduce the required 10-foot side setback from the east side lot line to 1 foot. The Bridge to Our Future Community Master Plan designates this area as a community activity center. The intention of that designation is to provide places to live, work, shop around key intersections and along corridors, to evolve areas into well-connected, walkable places within a 15-minute walk, bike, or transit trip of surrounding properties. The code requirements that the variance relates to is included in the site packet. As stated previously, the site is improved with a split-level building that's 2 stories, an accessory parking lot. Along the edge of the water, the parking lot is held up by a wood retaining wall. Well, retaining wall is
Generous.
generous description. The site slopes down significantly to the water on the backside of the wood wall. The structure is a split level, meaning the ground elevation is between the first and second floor. The second floor of the structure extends over the water, as seen in the photo. The applicant is proposing to enclose the space on the front of the building, as shown on these 2 photos, and use it as locker rooms for the proposed use. The second floor of the structure is proposed to be an office to support the use. The applicant is proposing to construct a platform over the existing parking lot and build a sauna on the structure. Cold plunge tubs will also be placed on the platform. The use of the property as a personal service requires 8 parking spaces based on the proposed square footage of the use. The applicant is proposing a shared use parking agreement with the neighboring property, 3555 Lake Eastbrook property, to account for the required property. The proposed use of the property as a sauna or a personal service is consistent and permitted in the zone district. The applicant has provided 2 letters of support that are included in the packet. And then I would just like to add that the usable depth of the property, meaning where things can actually go, is 40 feet in depth. There are required setbacks from both the front lot line and the water's edge, both of which are 25 feet, which exceeds the depth of the land on the property. With that, I will turn it over to Ms. Swanson for her report.
I want one clarification from you. Is there any setback that they're requesting that's different than what's there now?
It would be the side yard setback along the eastern portion of the site.
Where the parking lot is?
Yes. If, so as shown here, the sauna structure would be within the 10-foot setback that the parking lot currently exists within.
Okay, so when you say they need a variance to be far or closer to the water and all, it's already there, right?
Yeah, it's the scale of intensity that requires the variance because we're improving an existing condition. We're increasing arguably the nonconformity.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood which setbacks were already there and which ones were being requested. So it's the parking lot that's really going to change as far as setbacks go.
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Swanson, sorry.
And once again, I went by this property a couple times, the first or second week of April, and then even again this morning. And this morning, I will note there was some construction going on in the adjacent property that was not there when I was there before. But as the aerials show, and just driving this area, this is a series of smaller businesses. There's a vacant old restaurant there that's being redeveloped. It's right across the street from a mall, the mall parking lot. There's some for sale signs going up there. So there's, I would say it's an area that might be seeing some transition of how it's used. Right along this strip where the applicant's property is, were some other personal service businesses, very small, frankly, very similar in structure and facing the same constraints on their property that this individual is facing as well.
Okay. Now you can go. And please give us your name and any other information you'd like to tell us about.
Yes, my name is David Stouffer, and the property is 3535 Lake Eastbrook Boulevard. And yeah, I'm here to ask for a dimensional variance, hoping to be able to build a sauna big enough to help the wonderful people of Grand Rapids sweat out and feel better, getting the cold plunge afterwards for refreshing time. So yeah, I build saunas and cold plunges as a business, and so I've had a lot of customers ask for a way to be able to use a sauna because maybe they can't afford one to put in their backyard quite yet. So this is kind of a response to that need, and I think the people of Grand Rapids would really enjoy it.
Go ahead.
I will note in the packet there were 2 letters. They were both in support of this. One was from the adjacent property owner that would be entering into the shared parking agreement. And the other, and I apologize because these weren't in the packet when I reviewed it in detail, appears to be someone who is also immediately adjacent on the other side.
Yeah, that's from Alexis. She's the Eyelash Republic owner.
Okay, thank you so much. So those are in the letter, in the packet for the board to review. I did have a couple of questions. Just kind of clarifying, you would be building, keeping the existing structure, improving it, and building over the parking lot and staying within that footprint, not going more out into the water or disturbing the waterside property there.
That's correct.
Okay. And then could you talk a little bit, please, about why you're requesting the side variance? It's very obvious you need the one toward the water, but I had some concerns or questions about the dimensional variance to the adjacent property, please.
Yeah, the space there is very limited, and so after using a sauna or cold plunge, it's important to have somewhere to cool down. So I'd put chairs out or something comfortable for people to be able to be outside all year round. I think that's a big, important thing to, as a part of using the sauna and cold plunge, to be able to be outdoors afterwards and have somewhere to relax and acclimate to the temperature.
So you're requesting an additional 9 feet or 10. Is that critical to the operation? Could you still operate it without that side dimension?
No, I think it's extremely critical for it. I think it needs it in order for it to
I
work
see.
as intended.
Yeah, I see, okay.
So if that dimension were not approved, the business could not be built and operated?
I don't think people would enjoy it nearly as much, and I don't think it would have the intended use as well.
Okay. Could you also then please talk a little bit about the parking arrangement that's being proposed?
Yes, the property owner is actually here as well, and we have a lease or an agreement to make sure that parking is available for the sauna and cold plunge studio, and so the neighboring spot, the neighboring property there at 355, if you can, I could probably try and pull up, I don't know if Rowan can help me, but it has hundreds of parking spots. And across the street, there's thousands of parking spots.
Yeah, just a
And so my goal is to make more things people of Grand Rapids can utilize rather than just look at parking.
Okay.
Usually we have the opposite problem.
Yeah, that's,
Those were the only questions I had. Madam Chair.
Anybody else have questions? No. Okay. Mr. King? I was looking down there, sorry.
No.
Okay, I do. You're putting decking over the asphalt.
Yes.
You're going to put the saunas and the cold plunges on top of that? I mean, is it something that can be dismantled in the future, or are they permanent buildings? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, everything can be dismantled. I'm not sure what you mean.
Will the sauna building, because there be, I assume, different saunas in one kind of big building, is that a portable unit?
Are you, Chairwoman, are you trying to get at, is
Oh,
like
no, this
how
is
usable?
a structure that is it's not going to be on wheels or anything like that.
No.
This is a permanent structure that is going to be built to the highest quality possible. I do only quite high-end saunas.
I get that.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to imply that you don't. But what I'm trying to get at is, when you're done with this property, can we get a property back that has some parking?
If this needed to be removed and parking returned, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at. How much are we changing this property so?
My goal is to stay there for quite a while, though.
We hope so. That we're just not doing something to a property that doesn't make it usable
Right.
20 years.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
From now, so, okay. So you have 2 plunges and part of your sauna in the 10-foot setback.
That's correct.
So I assume the question to us, Ms. Swenson, is can he do this without encroaching on that 10-foot setback?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the question I asked, and I think the answer I heard was
Yes,
no.
but-
And I'm not a design expert, but
The guy next to you could probably
yes,
help you.
if someone could talk to me about shifting that to the left. Perhaps this is getting more into discussion of the motion, but a zoning will run with the land forever.
Right.
And while, as the adjacent property is currently going to be used, and the relationship that you have with that current property owner, that you can work out these details, 50 years from now, you could still have a building that would immediately abut the neighbor's property, because zoning runs with the land forever. So I'm struggling a little bit with that, and I'm looking and saying, well, there's 2 plunges to the right. Could those move to the left? Could they be reconfigured differently? Would the business still be economically viable and the property still usable if that side variance was not there? Because that's a standard, one of the standards we have to meet, that the property can't reasonably be used without the variance.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to that, because, just to what the applicant said earlier, which was, really that's not, I mean, technically, yes, but that's not in alignment with the business model or, the experience that they want to have, which I can appreciate is subjective, and our chairwoman is probably going to disagree with me on that. But what I do want to say about the 10-foot setback is there's already a parking lot there. It already completely abuts the neighboring property. I can appreciate that now there'll be a wall and a roof, and it looks like the applicant planned some green space between the two. I guess my ask is, how is that different? If it runs with the land 50 years from now, this is a commercial area. The buildings abut. They're always going to abut. It's either going to be a parking lot or it's going to be a useful business. And so from my perspective, they already have the right to completely abut the area with their parking lot. So why would we now, because they're trying to do something better with this building, why would we not find a way to let that occur?
I think that setbacks exist in the zoning ordinance for multiple purposes, including safety, including fire protection, including whatever. So 50 years from now, you would have a building within that setback.
Which I can appreciate, and that building is presumably going to be built, because right now it is a parking lot. So I would imagine that adjacent landowner would take that into account. I mean, and I don't say this lightly, that we should get rid of setbacks. Obviously, I appreciate zoning rules. That's why I'm on the Board of Zoning Appeal. This isn't really a hot ticket. But I really like zoning. And normally I would be all about setbacks, and I completely hear what you're saying. I'm just saying that this is a building that currently exists, the parking lot currently exists, and they simply want to use the same amount of space. And so from my perspective, that makes it unique. I mean, how many buildings do we have that's basically perched on the side of a river?
It is in the river.
It is in the river. The thing is in the river. And so from my perspective, I mean, that is, exceptional, that there is already a parking lot there. It already takes up that setback. I mean, why wouldn't we allow for the continued use of that?
Mr. Brady, is the parking lot non-conforming right now?
It is, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Right, but he has.
I just want to know.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it goes back to our usual discussions around, and even our earlier discussion around, we want people to use existing buildings. And so are we going to remove his right to that setback and
So just a
because
point
he
of
wants to
order.
improve it?
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead,
Go ahead.
Mr. King.
Do we want to close the public comment period and continue discussion, or do we have additional
Probably
questions for the applicant?
That's probably great.
Oh, okay.
No, we
Sorry.
haven't gone
That
in.
was a great question. I just dived right in.
No, it's fine.
It's all right. No, we may want to, though.
We love you for it.
You're used to me.
Okay. I am going to ask for a public comment, and that way we know what else is out there, and it can help us with this discussion, probably, I'm assuming. So if any of you want to come up and talk about this, we would love to hear from you.
Please state your name and address.
Yeah.
My name is Jean Stouffer, and I own the building at 3555 Lake Eastbrook Boulevard Southeast, which is the one that's most impacted by this, and I am the most excited about this happening. The area I want to have Renaissance in. I have a lot of money invested in this area. I have done a lot of work on the building adjacent. And I would love something to happen with this vacant, deteriorating building. And if it means signing an affidavit that I won't build within 10 feet of it so a fire engine can get there, I'll do it. But this is a serious improvement that will impact me positively, and I urge you to agree with this zoning request of variance, and we'll do what it takes to get it to happen. So, any questions for me?
You're the property that's offering the parking?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
I've
Anybody else?
already, you saw work being done at mine, and I've already done work in hopes that you would approve this request for a variance in how I'm improving my parking lot, which was awful. So it's really going to be nice now. There's going to be green space in it. And I'm excited about this happening in the neighborhood and really hope you approve it.
All right. Anybody have any other questions of her? No? Okay, thank you. Anybody else? I'm assuming you're here in support? Okay, all right. Do you want further input, or do you want to close the public hearing?
I think we're done with public hearing, so I will close the public hearing. Make a motion to.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay. I am going to break the rule and ask for input from the applicant. I should have thought of this before. Part of what you can put into a 10-foot setback is green space. Is there a way to take your layout and kind of put your green space at the lot line and still accommodate all the units you want to accommodate to make this successful?
Unfortunately not. This is it's necessary for the function of a sauna and cold plunge studio to have space for people to cool down and relax after using the sauna.
And you can't do that on the east side?
Well, it would just compress everything into the area that would make it where there's not enough room for people to safely walk around and about as they're passing shoulders with other people. It's important to have enough space to move around.
On the plan, it shows them.
Go ahead and.
I'm sorry, can you clarify that comment, because on the plan, and I'm
Yeah.
looking at 65, Rowan, it shows like a garden with some green, what I presume would be some sort of plant planned? Is that no longer planned, or?
There might be some inspirational photos that were included in the document, so I don't know if that's an exact representation of what the sauna studio will look like.
Understandable, got it.
Yeah, that
But it looks like there's just,
inspirational plan doesn't show any space
yeah,
for
let's
people to
see.
gather. I think that's why we're having an issue.
I do wish this property had more land and was bigger.
Maybe you can buy it from your neighbor.
Could I just pose a quick question? Because I just want to clarify, because I think there's been a couple different questions, and I just want to make sure I'm hearing I'm not sure the right concerns or right questions, because I've heard good conversation about green space and about parking. So I think first, I just want to clarify and confirm from the renderings and from the applicant, and that the board's on the same page, that the space that we're looking at using right now, the only space that we're looking at using is parking lot.
Correct.
It's turning parking lot into a business,
Right.
right? Okay. So it's not removing any existing green space. It's parking lot. Okay.
Correct.
So I think that's the first thing I wanted to confirm. So is the concern the lack of addition of green space, or is it the lack of parking, or the proximity to the parking that's next door to it? Because it's parking next to parking, right? So it's not even like a building extension that's going to abut to a building. It's a building extension that's going to extend to another parking lot.
Correct.
Okay. So is the concern that there's not on-site parking, or there's not green space?
I don't have any concerns.
I think the concern is, can we make this business happen, in a way that's profitable or, functional within the setback? I mean, within the code.
So I think
And
that.
we know that the code is already defunct when it comes to the building.
Yeah.
He's going to improve the building, which is awesome, because it is bad. It's just this 10 feet of the parking lot that is going to be kind of a new situation. And what we're here to do is to make sure that whenever you can, you do it according to code. And that's why I asked if the green space and the moving around space and stuff could be in that 10-foot section, and things moved in a bit. And I'm not understanding, I guess, unless the rendering on page 65 is actually what we're looking at building.
I would defer to the site plan as shown on your screen as what is being proposed. I think the rendering, it's hard to see where the property line
Yeah,
falls.
it
The
is.
landscaping might be on the adjacent property.
Okay, that's helpful.
Rowan, I have a couple questions.
Okay.
Is deck allowed to be built into a setback?
There are setbacks
I
for
kind of did.
patios and decks from property lines, which is 3 feet.
Okay. Is the sauna an accessory building?
We're considering it a part of the primary.
Prior to the primary building. If it was an accessory building,
It'd be 3 feet.
it'd be 3 feet, okay.
Okay.
Another issue too is privacy for the people using the sauna, so that they're not being looked at by people who are in the parking lot parking. So being able to have the privacy to be able to be in your swimsuit and not be, you know,
Yeah, that's why I
it's
suggest.
pretty crucial for this whole business.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have to put in some decent green space for that to happen. You're right.
Green.
Okay.
Rowan, if these two lots were combined for some reason, the side setback would go away, correct? Create some other issues, but that issue would go away.
Two lots were combined? I thought this was one lot.
This and the adjacent lot.
It's a hypothetical question,
Yeah.
if they were to be combined.
I mean, if it's not.
Oh,
And
okay. Go ahead, Ms. Swanson.
Roan, as I drove the property today, it looked like everybody was maybe next to each other without always following the side dimensional variances. Is that a fair observation?
Without looking at property to property specifically, I wouldn't be able to say. I know that this area was developed when all of the malls went in the 60s. I would have to look into the existing setbacks to say.
Okay. I just, again, observationally, they were very close and next to each other. And the parking lot being constructed in the setback area is non-complying right now, so it's already non-complying.
Yeah, if the parking lot were to be, let's say, empty, if that was to be green space and the parking lot was to go in, a parking lot would also have to meet the 10-foot side setback.
Okay.
So what you're saying is
Yeah. Make it even more
if they came in to
complicated.
repave and came in to see for a permit, they would be required to not pave within 10 foot of that.
It would depend on the extent of paving that they were doing, if those compliance parts of our ordinance would be triggered, but if compliance was required, they would have to stay 10 feet away from the side lot line, yes.
This might be a question for you, or, well, it's one of you guys. If they were granted a 10-foot easement by the neighboring, how does that affect setbacks, if they have the right to use it?
Easements wouldn't affect the zoning code setback requirements at all.
Thank you.
So if the neighboring property owner who spoke granted an easement for fire truck access on her property, that wouldn't alter any of this discussion or any of the setback requirements for this property under consideration. If that helps.
Rowan, if they came in and built a new, if there was no parking lot here and they wanted to come build a new parking lot here, they could get close to the property line by putting up a 6-foot fence, right? In this zone
Yeah,
district.
6.6 feet, yes. Yeah, they could get an additional 3 feet.
Okay, I thought it could be all the way to the lot line. No. Okay.
So that's an exception to the 10-foot setback?
It gets complicated with parking lots. Parking lots have potentially, at certain requirements, 2 to 3 different setback measurements and landscape buffers that they need to meet. But generally, parking lots in this situation would have to comply with all of the setbacks of the zone district. Mr. Lewis and I just talked about the landscape buffer requirement that can be reduced, I believe, landscape buffer that can be reduced with a 6-foot privacy fence. There's language in our ordinance that can allow for the reduction of that with a 6-foot privacy fence. Nuances in our ordinance would likely not apply to this case, but Mr. Lewis's point is well taken, that those lines have some malleability within our ordinance.
Okay.
So I know this typically, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I know this typically would go, if we said, yes, we're all for this, it goes with the land going forward. I know in the past, we've also put restrictions for, you have to operate certain hours, and if someone goes against the regulations that we put on it, does that rescind our decision?
I think it would depend on the decision itself. Like if it was a use variance and they went against the conditions of a use variance, it would put that use variance into question. Or something we would have to work with.
I would say, because this is a very specific use.
Yeah.
If someone moves on, you're not going to put a bar in the sauna.
And generally, a condition of your approval would supplement the actual variance you're granting. So a violation of the condition could give rise to zoning code enforcement action, but wouldn't necessarily,
Take away.
the remedy wouldn't necessarily be automatic undoing of the variance. Yeah.
Thank you.
Typically, all of the motion language include the language per plan submitted, or it's implied, so something like adding a bar to this existing sauna would not be per plan submitted before you, it would materially impact your decision. So if the use was to change, we would have to do an evaluation on how similar it is to the plans that were submitted and evaluated by the Board of Zoning Appeals.
One last question.
Yes.
Is the diagram behind you with the saunas and the plunges all under one roof? Or is part of it outside?
Part of it is open air.
The plunge part?
Yes.
And how are you stopping people from the parking lot next door from seeing that part of the operation?
Large vegetation.
Oh, boy. Not on your property?
I do have enough coverage, green space on my property. I also have a lake.
No, I'm talking about the east side parking lot.
Let's see, what is,
He just
Oh.
made my point.
Yeah, either a fence or it's actually quite a bit lower from the neighboring parking lot.
Yeah, so they're going to, yeah,
So,
that's why I'm trying to
yeah,
understand
I would,
how you're,
privacy is important, so I would make
Right.
sure that the people are definitely, feel quite safe and protected when they're using it.
I'm seeing, trying to figure out how, that's why I would think that 10-foot setback would be conducive to some really good green space that would be comforting as well as protective.
Yeah, it just unfortunately pinches the property. The property is so pinched by the lake and by the road that I need somewhere to put the space for the people of Grand Rapids to use the saunas and cold plunges. And so this really provides the only opportunity for that.
Okay, and the open space next to the plunges to the west,
Yes,
what is that for?
that's for people to sit in a chair and relax after using the sauna if they don't want to be in the cold plunge or they're waiting their turn to use the cold plunge. Because usually people only go into cold plunge for about a minute or two because it's very cold water.
Okay, and that can't be switched?
Where the plunges are versus the plunges can be moved. Absolutely.
But not the sauna?
The sauna cannot.
Okay, understood. Okay, I get it now. Okay, anybody else have any questions? I'll go back to having a closed public hearing. Sorry about that. Okay, all right, thank you so much. Do I need another motion, Mr. Attorney, now that I messed it up?
You just asked applicant for further
I did,
clarification. It wasn't a public hearing, correct?
yeah,
Then we don't need another motion.
okay.
You're fine.
All
Yep.
right. All right. Ms. Swanson?
The planning staff had requested that we treat this as two separate variances.
Okay.
One for the lakeside variances and then treating the side dimensional variance separately. So I think I will approach it that way. We have the same criteria we went through that you were so patient for the last one. So we have, for dimensional variance, we have to have a finding of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions. That certainly exists on this property. It's very narrow and you can't possibly abide by the front-back setbacks from the water. Substantial property right, the other property owners adjacently and so situated also have the same problem, and if And they operate within those setbacks, so we can't apply those there, so I believe that criteria is met as well. Certainly not self-created, the building and the property conditions existed long before the applicant. There is no substantial detriment, it's already being used that way. The adjacent properties are being used that way. So I find that criteria to be met, and I find it is consistent with the master plan and zoning ordinance. Looking for my language here. There it is. Because this is an area we want people, we want to activate the land, we want it to be a place where people can come and connect. So I find that consistent with the zoning for the area. So I would make a motion to approve that based on those findings. Approve the variance based on those findings.
Second?
Got a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Sorry, I should ask for conversation, but I thought that was pretty straightforward. Okay, second one?
I think, by way of introduction, I'm also going to note that as I looked at this area, it is very much in transition right now. There's a lot of property for sale. There is the construction going on adjacent. I think retail needs in general are changing, and that area is going to change quite a bit as well. And there is a lot of vacant property out there, and so having this used consistently with the property or consistently with the zone is a good thing, and that will come in when we talk about master plan. I don't know if this matters either, but there are remedies available where the additional property could be acquired and then added to this property so that the setbacks could be achieved. And I struggle with that a little bit
I think that
because,
presumes that he can afford it or that it's actually up for sale, neither of which is, do we know to be true.
but what it also bothers me is it adds to the cost of the project and may make the project less financially feasible as I was going to finish. So I struggled back and forth on that
Right,
as well.
valid.
I think personally, I think you just need to take the property for what it is
Right.
and figure out if this works.
And again, I think I am influenced a bit by the transition of the area and the vacancy of the area. So I'm going to make a motion and we'll see where it goes, because I'm going to make a motion to actually approve the variance for the side setback. I'm going to, based on the fact that the property is it's a small property, it's bordered by water, it has difficulty operating within the existing footprint. And I do believe, although I don't have evidence, that by driving around there, this variance is being exercised by others in a non-conforming way. So I believe they have met the substantial property right. It is not self-created. The property has been this way, has been used in a non-complying way for parking, and using that to create the structure above it is simply continuing that use. I don't believe it'll be a substantial detriment to build adjacent to the property at this point, because we can arrange for fire egress if that's necessary. So I don't believe there's a substantial detriment to building into the side variance. And I think it is consistent with the master plan and zoning to use the property for the enjoyment of the neighborhood in this way. So that's my motion.
I'll second.
Before I ask, I'm not a big proponent of saying because it's been illegally used in the past is a good reason to continue illegally using it, but.
I guess
go
I
ahead.
use it for a substantial property right. I think that there has been a substantial property right built by historical uses to develop the property closely adjacent to others through parking or, frankly, construction. And so I think there's a substantial property right that everyone is enjoying out there, that they maximize the property, use the side variance, and use parking adjacent.
And I'd also note that at the time the parking was put in, it wasn't illegal. I mean, so they're just, so I take issue with it's an illegal use. It's not. They're using an historic use. They're using the parking lot, that area, in a way that has already been blocked off and they bought it that way. So I can appreciate what you're saying about extending, you know, we do want to take a look at, yes, we want to extend non-conforming. I'm of the mind, though, that why would we penalize someone who wants to use the same amount of space for a different purpose that's going to improve the area, is my thought process. And all of these lots are built, if you drive down that area, which I did, they're, you know, they abut each other. It's not, they all do.
And we don't know. I mean, it's non-conforming now. We don't know if it was non-conforming back then, correct?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay. That was helpful. Okay. Thank you. All right, any other discussion? Mr. Zeiser?
Yeah, I'm good with everything. The only question I have is a building department question. I think they'll handle that, right? Because you're going to a zero, if we approve this, we're going to a zero lot line, and that brings up
Yeah.
fire ratings and what have you.
Yep, so at the zero lot line, there are requirements for fire separation. All of that will be handled when the project comes in for a building permit.
So we don't have to do anything with that. Thanks.
And the mere fact that it's per plans and the variance is for this specific use, correct?
Correct.
Going forward? Okay. All right.
I just wanted to add one final note, and it's
Yep.
not in any way trying to change anyone's mind or decisions, 'cause, I've kind of already made the second. I wanted to just state my appreciation for the project in so far that I feel like it really fits the intent of the current community master plan. And that's kind of the area that I kept going back to in my notes. And Ms. Swanson, I appreciate you reiterating that even in your motion about providing places where people can live, work, and shop. 15-minute connectivity, about biking, walking, transit. So I also just want to appreciate the connectivity between those two things. So I see this as like a very high-value project that very much meets that community master plan desire. So that was it. Thank you.
And even though I'm a stickler for the rules, the fact that this can be returned to a business that has parking is huge to me. I mean, I'm not taking a lot that can conform and making it non-conforming forever. It can be converted, it can go back, and it is for this specific use. And quite frankly, the area it's in with all the excessive parking that's around it helps a lot, so I appreciate that. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the 10-foot side setback?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks for putting up with our discussion. And thanks for your investment. I know we do. It's the state regulations and the city regulations and yeah, join us sometime.
Precedent we set,
Yes,
the standard.
yes, the standard that we set. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. For those of you who were, for those of you who were here last month, I really appreciate it. We had some really great discussions. And we're going to do a little bit more of that, just because we didn't get a chance to get through it all. And so we'll have another training session, I don't know, when we have time and we get around to it, and talk a little bit more about actual cases that have caused us some heartache. But otherwise, you have before you a letter that has my name on it, and I take no right of penmanship in it because Rowan did such a great job that I didn't need to do anything with it. But in case you didn't know, we asked the planning department a few months ago to look at the replacement of front yard parking. This typically comes up with old businesses that have front yard parking that they want to resurface. And right now, the code only allows them to do it in pieces, which is really kind of stupid, inexpensive. And so we asked the planning department to look at the code and rewrite that so that it made it easier on the property owners. We also were getting some, the basement egress window wells, those cases that we were getting, we pretty much routinely approve. And so we were thinking that with the push to get more viable housing, to keep people in their houses, to maybe add a unit, that this is something they might want to look at. And they did, and they looked at both of these and they sent it to the city commission with the stipulation that they thought that both of those should be administrative departure. So that staff is still looking at it to make sure it's in the right place, it's safe, all those things. But the mayor was not intrigued with that idea and thought that people should be able to put in, especially like egress windows, by right. Why do they need to talk to anybody about it? And there was discussion among the commissioners, and they ended up sending it back to the planning commission to basically give more of a reasoning behind why administrative departure versus just let people do what they want to do. And so staff thought it might be nice if we put together a statement as a board as to why we thought the administrative departure was a good idea, if we do, so that they would have more of an insight as to what our conversations were about sending it to them in the first place. And so if you're okay with this letter going through, it will be submitted to the Planning Commission for their discussion next Thursday. You want to add anything?
That was a great summary. Both of these text amendments came from Board of Zoning Appeals cases and decisions. We made these suggestions to the Planning Commission because you as a body had evaluated numerous cases regarding these two and approved them. I think there was maybe, of the 5 applications, 4 were approved unanimously and 1 only had 1 dissenting opinion on the approval. So we felt like with that direction from the Board of Zoning Appeals, I know that when I started, Chair Rabo told me that if things come before the Board of Zoning Appeals so frequently, it's not an issue with the property, it's an issue with the code. So we're attempting to make a code change so that we can allow these cases that had come pretty frequently to be administrative decisions that reduces time on the property owner's part, significant expense as well. They don't have to pay to come before you for a variance. So given that guidance from the board's decision-making, we propose these text amendments for Planning Commission, and as Chair Rabo has explained, it was approved by Planning Commission unanimously, went to City Commission. These 2 specific text amendments were remanded back to Planning Commission for further discussion. So we wanted to provide you all a chance to provide context on these 2 text amendments.
And I'm just going to add, because I can and sometimes staff can't, that we have, from what I've seen of city commission meetings lately, we have a mayor who's not real familiar with the process of planning and zoning, and is very much for people's independent and personal rights, which is great. But I don't think it was clear in the discussion around this at the city commission table. The mayor was concerned that it was costing people money and time. And that's not necessarily true. They still have to come in for the building permits. And it's a part of that building permit process that a planner would look at this and say, oh, yeah, that makes sense because the furnace is over here and, you can't put a window well there, that there's enough safety features packed in that it's safe for the neighborhood. And so it's not an extra step. It's not adding a lot more time. It may add a few dollars, but it's nothing compared to what they were paying when they had to come here. I think that just helping the planning staff understand why we were sending it to them and having the planning commission be able to explain to the mayor that this isn't a big deal. This is part of what's going to be a process anyway to get a building permit may really help them get this through the commission.
Yeah.
So,
Administrative departures for projects like this take several minutes at most.
Yeah.
Mr. Lewis, you and I have worked on administrative departures before that are fairly simple and take the time it takes to type some words on a form. So there are just some requirements from staff side that are detailed in the Planning Commission packet that relative to why these need to be administrative departures, primarily safety and giving staff the time and the direction to review these projects as they need to be reviewed for compliance and safety.
yeah. That was the big thing. Go ahead.
Process questions here.
Uh-huh.
So this went to the mayor or to the city council, and city council did not accept it and sent it back to the planning commission, asking them to think about that and bring it back to them. Is that where we are?
What happened was the mayor did not like it and was proposing that they, at that time during that meeting, go ahead and approve it as a right, not as an administrative departure.
Okay.
A couple of the commissioners took offense to that. That's a strong word, but didn't agree with him, exception to that, and said, we've got these committees, these planning commissioners that do this all the time. Maybe we should go back and ask them why they suggested it be administrative departure and not just a flat out right. And that's how it got back to the planning commission. Does that help?
That does. I guess I was questioning if we would further our case more to make the letter go to the city council, but since this isn't in front of them.
Next week it's in front of the planning commission.
Yeah, and I feel like we're singing to the choir to be sending our comments to the planning commission. So this is process. I wonder if we do some kind of CC there. And
Makes sense.
yeah, I guess, yeah, that was my main point.
Yep.
Why are we singing to the choir?
Why are we singing to the choir, and is there a way to say very bluntly what you just said, that there's still in many cases a need to look at things for safety, but if it is not feasible, it's appropriate for administrative departure versus this second level of administrative and bureaucratic
Right.
morass.
I can change the address at the top of the letter to the appropriate individual for city commission and just have the chair sign the same exact letter twice, one to the planning commission, one to city commission.
The only question that I had is that was, in general, I support this, and Chairwoman, I appreciate your expertise on this issue. And I agree, I don't want them to have to pay to come
Yeah.
see us, right? I mean, most of the time, these are like the ones I see on the agenda, and I'm like, oh,
There's a piece.
slam dunk. Like, of course, we're gonna like allow you to like put in an egress window so you can have a fourth bedroom and it doesn't affect anybody. So I do support this. The one thing I do just want to note was that we're not feasible. Sometimes I think that we've also considered that it's not practical, right? Or that it it is feasible, but the expense to the homeowner would be such that they wouldn't be able to do it. So I just want to make sure that we're not boxing ourselves in with that word, and that we allow for those other considerations. Because I just remember a couple of them we've talked about, like, well, we could move our entire furnace, and so technically it's feasible.
Yeah.
But the cost of it would be something that we wouldn't be able to bear. So that would be my only ask on the letter, was that just to give the staff a little bit more room to consider that on the administrative departure.
I also just have a quick note. Sorry, are you sure?
Go for it.
Okay. So again, yeah, I absolutely support this. I think this is a great idea. I watched that city commission meeting. I could hear your teeth clenching. I kid.
Such a reputation.
One of the things I like that you've kind of laid out here, and I see it very strongly in the basement egress window, is we wanted administrative review because we still want someone to look at it for these considerations, right?
Right.
I feel like that might be missing from the front yard parking section. And one thing I want to note, I know we've had conversations about it before, is, the long-term intent of having people bring those recommendations to this body was so that over time, we could perhaps make recommendations to reduce the amount of parking that people had and increase green space, right? Whether that was through redesigning the way the spaces were shaped, or just saying like, hey, back in the day, the city required you to have 100 parking spaces for every toilet, now you only need to have 2, so let's cut that down. And we would help facilitate that. So perhaps as part of the, hey, this is why we think it could be administrative review, is simply, the intent is to reduce pavement and impermeable space and over time increase green space, and that can happen at the administrative level without having to come here and the expense of coming here. I don't know if others would support that, but
So what you're saying is, like in that last full paragraph, where it
yeah,
says,
provide a rationale, because if we're not providing a rationale for administrative review, why can't people just do it? Why does it even need, But the administrative review process, similar to how in the top and under egress windows, the administrative review process appropriately empowers the planning department staff to consider crucial safety and design elements, under parking.
and
It
he's-
empowers them to help reduce the amount of parking overall, or,
And Rowan's just pulled up on your screen.
Oh.
One of the reasons why that was stated by the mayor, that we didn't need administrative departure, because there are so many caveats to, you can do this, you can't do that, you have to have this, you can't, And yes, there are a lot of checks that you have to check off, but I wonder if it was just allowed, if they would actually get checked off. And to your point, if we could reduce the parking, which is kind of what the city would like us to go,
Yeah.
then that even makes more sense.
yeah.
And
So,
that may hit a note with the commission.
Mr. Lewis, I know you have
Sorry.
something to add as well before I.
Oh, yeah. This comment is really more targeted towards the windows than the parking lots. But,
Okay.
having done very many administrative departures, it's still a fair amount of knowledge of the zoning code. Like, it asks you questions, or the zoning ordinance, it asks you questions of why you're doing this, and you have to figure out which part of the ordinance you're complying with or not complying with. So as a layperson who owns a house and wants to put in a egress window, it's not obvious how to answer those questions, and you would need Rowan's help to go through and do that. There is, it is what it is. I don't know if there's a simpler administrative departure form that could be made for a window or something, but, administrative departures are a technical document.
Yeah, the point is well taken. Mr. Lewis, you are a very competent design professional, so I trust your administrative departure skills. Typically with these smaller permits, individuals come into our counter to pull these building permits, as opposed to a professional like Mr. Lewis, who is working through staff, either through our our back-end permitting system or over email. So when individuals come into the counter to pull a very simple building permit, if they need an administrative departure for a setback for X, Y, and Z reasons, staff significantly assists in the filling out of that departure and guides the applicant through that process. Certainly, I think looking at the administrative departure form is something we've talked about internally on how much of that information is necessary to meeting the intent of the administrative departure languages. We're also discussing fees. The administrative departure fee is a $240 application, typically for small permits like basement egress window wells, where the building permit doesn't even exceed $50. We waive that fee. Staff has the ability to modify those fees for administrative departures. So we do that where logically it makes sense.
Yeah.
I pulled up the.
Whereas right now, sorry, just to clarify, whereas right now they'd have to pay what, $1,500 to come here?
1,700.
$1,700, yeah, for an egress window. Yeah,
That's a lot.
yeah, so I think that, I think that this letter is well-written and just continuing to stress that we're trying to, help property owners while at the same time not allowing people to do whatever.
And they don't have to
They
get
would
on the
like.
agenda and wait for a month.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that this is, when I was on the zoning board before commission days, way back, we rewrote the questions that people had to answer for the points. And we literally, I can't remember how many times we met over it, but we literally wrote it to a sixth grade level because you have to. That is, you are trying to make things easy for the least able of the community. And I think that you're always going to have times where you go, do they really need to know what part of the code, they're asking for, forgiveness on kind of thing. And it's just a process we've gone through over the years. And so as the code changes, those things are going to change too.
Yeah, Mr. King, your point about reducing parking is well taken. It's something we
Yes.
thought about when writing the administrative departure for this replacement. So if you look at 2F and this departure, when you are talking about replacing a non-conforming parking lot in the front yard, if it's a massive parking lot, there's a limit to the amount of spaces you're able to retain. So the language is written where you either can have 20 spaces or 120% of your parking calculation based on the ordinance table. So if there's a parking lot that has 50 spaces in the front yard and the business per ordinance only needs 8, and you want to replace that parking lot, you can't replace all 50. You can replace up to 20 based under the administrative departures, or you can come here for a variance if you want more.
Interesting.
Or if a business, the calculation is like, under the ordinance, you're required 40 spaces, you would be able to replace 40 of those 50. So it's written as in a way to try to come closer into conformance with the ordinance by reducing parking where excessive parking exists. It's an equation that I can write out if that would be easier. But we wrote it intentionally to reduce massive parking lots in the front yard that are currently non-conforming by the number of spaces that they have. And also this language requires additional landscaping and green space per the departure.
Well, and I think anything that says to the commission, look, we're trying to make it simpler, we're trying to make it faster, we're trying to make it more in line with what we would like to see in the future. So if we can cut down on the size of asphalt they need to put down and save themselves some money, there's another reason we're doing it. If, adding, well, I don't think they care about whether or not we're creating more nonconformity, but, just kind of hitting that time, space, and economics, I think, is what I heard meant a lot to the commission, or at least the mayor.
And just regarding parking again, sorry, I know I become like the preacher of pavement. I never thought that would be like my role. I know there's also been situations though where people have come in front of us and we've said, well, the city said because of the current code that you need to have 15 spaces, but if would you be cool with 8? And we like create that departure here in this space so they have even less. Is that type of change something that can only happen in this space, or is that something that can happen in administrative review as well?
That's something we do quite a lot at a staff level.
Okay.
When projects just come up with plan review.
So I'm just thinking of like when it's getting in front of, I mean, again, not the planning commission, right? I mean, it's great to make the choir sing, but when you're trying to get in front of people to understand like why still having that administrative review process is possible is because they could walk away with even less parking.
Yeah.
Which my thought is that there's a number of people on that body, for example, people on that body who bike to work every day, who would really like champion the idea that they could come to you and you could say like, we can give you even less parking. I guess to everyone's point, I think the argument at city commission is like, if we're gonna allow it by right, why do they even need to meet with city staff? It's because, well, no, there's still benefits to having this administrative review process. We can walk away with even more green space.
But it
Like-
doesn't hurt for planning commission to be reminded of those bennies.
Certainly.
So that when they report to the city commission. it's
Yes.
there.
Yep, there are only 4 planners in our entire department who are authorized to sign administrative departures. Myself, Assistant Planning Director Tyler Kent, Planning Director Kristen Turkelson, and then I have a counterpart who shares my exact responsibilities as well, my colleague, Mr. Gurink. So to get an administrative departure, you have to talk to one of 4 of us, which is where we'll push for things like reducing parking and finding other solutions.
You guys should start wearing special hats.
Pavement police.
So from a process perspective, what do we need to do?
Well, would you like to suggest a different word than feasible? That's the only specific thing I've really heard other than adding
Practicable?
rationale. Practical? What do you think?
I mean, I don't
Yeah.
really need to wordsmith it. I just wanted them to have something more than feasible, because I think there's a lot of things that are feasible that they still wouldn't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I just wrote, when adhering to it when it is not feasible or practical. Well, yeah,
Fantastic.
Perfect.
That works great
Yeah.
for me.
And then a little reasoning behind why the parking.
yep. So I'll make those changes. So if you're comfortable with me working with Chair Rabot on that final letter and getting the chair's signature on that, then we'll give that to Planning Commission. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thanks for your work on this.
Yeah.
Of course.
Thank you.
The last item I wanted to talk about today is we have 0 cases on our May agenda. So I wanted to poll the board to see if you would like to cancel that meeting or finish the training for May.
I can't be here.
I won't be
I have a
here.
leadership summit.
No. You have an aversion to training.
I'm actually going to training, it's just training for my job. Yeah.
That would be May 15th.
I won't be here all staff's summit. Yeah.
I don't know, what do you guys want to do? Can everybody else make it? Well, we'll just have to make her sit through an audio tape or
Yeah,
something.
I mean, I'm happy to watch a recording or sit down with you, Rowan, and go over what I missed. I'm happy to set aside time for that, but.
This time I'm not going to lose my notes.
Okay. So we'll plan on finishing the training at our May agenda. I'll bring cookies or something. Finally, I wanted to introduce Maya Overman, who is our recording secretary for the near future. So Maya will be filling Carol's enormous shoes in the interim.
Yeah.
those of you-
Maya, don't be shy. Correct us, tell us if you can't hear us. I tend to mumble sometimes. Tell us you need clarity. We won't be offended.
For those of you who weren't here, we put forth a motion to rename the position to include Carol's name, which was very nice, and we had great big cookies. So we hopefully sent her off in a nice way, so she'll be missed. Not that you're not good. Okay.
Rowan, the June meeting is, where's the June meeting at, Rowan?
Yeah, so a couple things about the June meeting. The June meeting is June 17th, which is a Tuesday. We moved it when we set the 2025 calendar because that Thursday is a federal holiday, Juneteenth. So we, of course, cannot meet on that day. So we moved it to the Tuesday before. Because we moved it to the Tuesday, we will not be in this building. I will set reminders on my calendar to email you every single week in advance of that meeting that we will be meeting in our old space at 201 at 1120 Monroe for that 1 month at the June 17th meeting. So expect fervent communication from me in advance of that meeting.
Do you want to do next month's training at 11:20?
We can, whatever the board feels.
Seeing as how we all go there anyway. It would save on parking, and
Okay,
does that work?
Yep,
For everybody? Okay.
okay. Expect those emails to come from me, just reminding about the switch.
Thank you. We need that. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you guys so much. This was great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.